Good morning, Keyshawn.
What's happening, Skip?
Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
You were there yesterday as the Lakers introduced JJ Redick as their new head coach. He took questions for, what, about 45 or so minutes?
Wow.
Pretty good. Anxious to hear what you saw and what you heard. But this was how GM Rob Pelinka began by explaining why the Lakers chose JJ Redick.
I think in industry in general and in sports in specific, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in patterns of being in a sea of sameness and doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. But when we embarked on this search, it was really important for us to see if we could do something a little bit different. And quickly in our conversations with JJ, it was very evident that he had a unique perspective and philosophy on basketball and how it's to be taught.
Interesting. Okay, Rachel, your response to what Rob Pelinka launched this media session with.
Yeah, I mean, look, I actually think Rob did a great job in this press conference. I don't always say that. I think JJ did a fantastic job in this press conference because, no shocker, the guy with the communications background won the press conference. If he didn't do well yesterday, that would have been a problem. As for the different stuff, I'm not sure that's the right word, because when you look at the Lakers' past 5 head coaches, let's say, Darvin Ham, Frank Vogel, Luke Walton, Byron Scott, Mike D'Antoni, those guys are all very different from each other. That's not a sea of sameness by any stretch. And by the way, there are lots of ways to do something different. If you're the Lakers in their coaching situation, you could, I don't know, keep a coach for more than 3 years. That's a different approach also. I think the word he used a little later was more accurate. He said modernize. And I think that is what he actually means, and I think that is what the Lakers need. Because
modernize how?
Well, so they haven't really had a coach that has embraced analytics the way JJ Redick made it clear he is going to embrace analytics. The quote he used yesterday was, he said, "I'm going to use math." So that's a reference, of course, to 3 is more than 2, the analytics war cry. And we just had a young coach, Joe Mazzulla, who is very analytics-focused, who just won an NBA title. So you can't say it's a mistake, per se. Obviously, it requires a blend of just looking at what's in front of you, but I think that that will be a more modern approach that JJ will use. And frankly, whatever happens with JJ Redick as a coach, what will really matter is the roster, and they need to take a more modernized view of the roster. They need to specifically seek out players who play the way JJ Redick wants to play. Meaning, they've got to get more shooters, which is, of course, what works around LeBron anyway. They have to up their scouting department. They have long had one of the most sparse, understaffed international and national scouting departments.
That requires funding.
That does require, yes. But Rob Pelinka made a good point in that same set of comments yesterday. He said, with the way the CBA is changing, the draft and developing your own players is more important than ever, because you just can't make those big trades that we've seen in the last, even the last year or two. Those won't be possible anymore. So if that's the case, he's got to modernize the scouting department. And I thought it was interesting that JJ Redick said he wasn't going to necessarily coach Summer League, which, by the way, would probably be pretty useful for him to do. But he said it's because he intends to be very busy with the free agency process and the draft process. So
but he did say he would be involved in the summer league.
Yeah, he did. He did. But what was interesting to me about that answer is he made it clear he will be involved in that stuff too. So to me, this is a more modern approach to the Lakers coaching job. Different. There's a lot of ways to be different.
No, I mean, I'm just laughing because you said a lot, and I'm listening to you, about what you discovered at the press conference. You're just giving us the information that they was giving us, right? For those of us didn't watch it or see it. In modernize and in the analytics and all that, and I'm sitting here thinking of you said Joe Mazzulla and the analytics, and I sat there and said, well, analytics, does that mean that getting a Porzingis, is that analytics? And going to getting a Derek White, is that analytics? And Drew Holiday? And having a Tatum and having a Brown? I don't think that's analytics. I think that you got some hell of a basketball players, though.
But they shot a whole lot of threes.
No, I understand that part. Yeah, I understand that part. But look, in the end, Rob Pelinka is doing what he needs to do as a general manager in terms of the press conference, right? All we do in sports is we look at the history. We look at the history. And history says that a first-time head coach with no coaching experience, they don't fare very well. I mean, that's what the history says. We can't run from that, whether it's analytics or not. He can modernize it all he wants. When you look at, first of all, JJ Redick is the 13th head coach without coaching experience, any coaching experience at all since 1990. So it's not really a whole lot. It's just really not. But then when you look at the guys, they average about 2.5 years of coaching before they get fired. And you mentioned, hey, it'd be nice to keep a coach around longer than 3 years. Well, history shows 2.5. And then when you start talking about the playoffs and getting into the playoffs and winning to get to a championship, none has ever done that. Now, if you're telling me the goal, and I would have liked to have heard him say, well, our goal is to develop JJ to be our coach 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, because what you're telling me is you want to win a championship right now. You want to win a championship right now. That's never happened with a guy who has no coaching experience. Now you say, well, it could happen. You got 2 of the top 10 players in the NBA. Well, you fired a guy that won a championship, and you fired another guy that took you to a Western Conference. No matter what the path was that they got there, whatever seeding, that doesn't really matter. All I can do is look at the history, and the history suggests to me that this is not going to be all roses in the end. It's just not. I mean, that's the way I look at it. And so, Skip, I like what Pelinka said at his press conference, but I'm not fooled. You're not going to fool me.
Okay, timeout before I proceed.
Yes.
As a lifelong, demanding, spoiled, rotten Laker fan that you are.
Okay, I'll take that.
You would be okay if Rob sat up there yesterday and said, we're going to develop JJ, we're going to bring him along slowly for 3 or 4 years,
you know
and we'll compete in 3 or 4 years. Really?
Because that's what you got in a coach. That's what you got.
That could be the reality.
So
Are you okay
the reality of it. Don't try to lie to me and have me all jumping up and down in my seat. And it's not going to go that way.
But you're okay just to sort of...
No, I'm not okay, but at least tell me the truth, Skip.
Okay, all right.
Tell me the truth.
Okay, I'll tell you the truth about what Rob said. And I like Rob a lot, and I do think he's done really good things the last 2 years to improve this roster. And I thought even going into this year, if they'd stayed healthy, I thought they were very competitive with that roster, and they lost too many key pieces who did not contribute the whole year. Now, back to what Rob said. So he says, when we embarked on this search, it was really important for us to see if we could do something a little bit different. So Dave McMenamin reported that right off the bat, their goals were, let's go get Jason Kidd #1, Ty Lue #2, and JJ was somewhere in the mix down the list. Well, is Jason Kidd something a little bit different? No, it's something pretty great. It's proven, right? Is Ty Lue different? No, he's really good at what he does, and you're not going to get him. It was unrealistic to even have those two at the top of your wish list, right? And then we go around the horn, and we got James Borrego being interviewed twice, and we're doing with Sam Cassell's in the mix, and then I'm not sure who else of those A-list candidates were on there. And finally, all of a sudden, bolt out of the blue, it's Dan Hurley, and I still think they got taken for a ride by Dan, but that would have been something a little bit different. I'll give you that, and yet the history of college coaches coming to the NBA is not very good, right? No. It's no better than the first time.
But at least he's coached
head coaches
at a high level.
Yes, he has. So you could
sell that a little more.
You would be far more excited right now with Dan Hurley, which is why you said, break the bank, baby. Just go, right?
Just do it.
Yeah, whatever. And then you would have broken his bank in Connecticut because he would have gone home with the biggest offer. He said, they're offering me $18 million. Can you guys match? You know? Okay. So if you had told me, and I'm going to say this one last time, if they had fired Darvin Ham, which I did not think in the beginning they should have done, I thought he had done enough to keep his job. If they had fired him and had JJ waiting on the back burner, and within a day or maybe a couple of days, you introduce JJ and say, we've got something different here. We really believe in JJ in the way he wants to teach basketball. It's how it's to be taught, said Rob. Well, and now I'm even thinking, well, how would JJ know how to teach basketball? He's never taught it to anybody except the third, as you pointed out last week, the 3rd and 4th graders. And I guess they were pretty good, but I don't know if that translates to a soon-to-be 40-year-old in LeBron James. So it still feels like this was a default position. Well, we couldn't do that. We couldn't get him. We couldn't get him. And finally, we wound up with JJ.